Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is going to join me, and we're going to talk about the 7 teams we are most excited to watch coming into the 2024-25 NBA season. But first, a fun, quick announcement at the top of the show.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? Just got done with a little parade to kick off homecoming week out here in Lakin, Kansas. Football started off good. We're 2-0. Watched a Netflix series this week. I don't know if we're going to get to talk about it or not, but we might touch on just a little bit. I don't want to get too far into this stuff, though, because I know we have an important announcement that we're both very excited about.
Yeah, so over the last month or so, we've had a new producer on the show, and we wanted to hold off just for a second to make sure that the relationship was going perfectly. And of course it was, because Andrew Claudio is the new producer on Game Theory, and he is the best. And we couldn't be more excited to have Andrew as a part of the family. Andrew is, what do you want to call it? The GM of Knicks Film School, obviously.
That's actually the perfect thing to call me. Shout out to one of our most loyal subscribers and followers, Robert Cross, who named me GMAC. But yeah, I'm excited to also be joining the Game Theory family. You guys have been awesome to work with over the last month and a half.
Have we though, Andrew? Have we been awesome to work with over the last month and a half?
I guess we kind of have to just allude to some behind the scenes. There was a worry about a Game Theory curse for a couple of weeks where I got COVID at one point. There was a window that got broken. There was a ceiling over a bathroom that collapsed at one point. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Oh, my computer died randomly on a Saturday morning while I was working on Game Theory work. But all this to say, I survived, and I couldn't be more excited to be joining this family and working with two gentlemen that I respect and enjoy working with. So looking forward to the future.
Yeah, and we couldn't be happier to have Andrew. You know, I've known Andrew a little bit for a while, but we got to know each other a little bit better at Summer League, and we were just really, really excited to, shout out to Fred Katz first and foremost, who kind of, made me realize that this was like a little bit more plausible than what I thought. But second, I mean, Andrew's just the absolute best. And plus, with Knicks Film School being a part of Blue Wire, which if you have noticed, Game Theory is now working with Blue Wire. Shout out to the Blue Wire folks. We couldn't be more excited to have Andrew on board. He's just truly the best producer across the board.
Thank you for the kind words. I hope I live up to that title. I guess to any Knicks Film School people that are watching, I'm not leaving Knicks Film School to come to Game Theory. I am staying at Knicks Film School. I want to make sure that was clear. But I am very excited to also be part of this. And, I thank you for the kind words, Sam. And I am excited. Even I got to tell you the icing on the cake that made me know that this is going to be a good fit. Whenever you bring up an obscure movie that Bryce has never seen, that I have also seen, I cannot wait to contribute to point out all the weird Yorgos Lanthimos movies, or maybe we get an Ari Aster in there, and get your takes on Midsommar or something like that, Bryce. But it'll be a fun time.
There is a Midsommar 4K that A24 is selling right now that I have had my eye on. Let's go with for a minute. Shout out to Physical Media as Bryce, quickly looks away and strongly stares off.
The other day, there was like 12 messages in our group chat, and I'm like, oh man, what did I miss? Like, this is really cool. Something must have happened in the NBA, or, I'm excited to see what I missed. and I didn't understand half the text messages. It was all these movie references and whatever. I was like, oh, this was such a letdown.
Yeah, we brought up Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness, which is a truly insane film that if Bryce was to watch, I think would like completely break his brain in a number of ways. I wouldn't even say that I enjoyed Kinds of Kindness, to be honest with you. I thought it was okay. It was a skillfully made movie, as most Yorgos Lanthimos movies are, and I did not vibe with it.
That's Yorgos though. Like well made, well crafted, weird as hell, and maybe you like it, maybe you don't. Like I would, Bryce, I would watch like you on playback watching The Lobster or Killing of a Sacred Deer or something like that.
Yeah, the lobster is basically this idea of like when you die, you become an animal. That one is the most normal. That and The Favorite. The Favorite is like a weird costume drama by and large, like involving the queen and like her servants, basically. That one is not by the books, but like fairly by the books, by his standards at least.
I have no comment.
The stare on Bryce's face right now.
All right.
I got nothing.
We got it. But you watched a Netflix show this weekend.
Yeah,
we're excited about that.
My wife and I watched The Perfect Couple, which was six episodes, I believe. I can't give my thoughts without spoiling it, so I'll just leave that it was fine. It was solid. I enjoyed it. It was worth my time. Didn't blow me away, but it was good. Middle of the road.
Did Rani enjoy it?
Yeah, I think she actually, I'll text her, but I think she stayed in the same lane as me. I don't think she was like over the moon for it, but it was worth the 5.5 hours or whatever.
Yeah. My wife and I are starting Slow Horses right now because I've read the first 3 books and I'm like midway, maybe a third of the way through the 4th book, which is each season is a book basically. And I'm very, very excited. Very excited about that.
I'm 2 episodes into The Perfect Couple, by the way, Bryce. So I look forward to talk. I also said to you guys beforehand, there's a character that looks like former Jets quarterback Sam Darnold on the show. And anytime he does anything, it's distracting. I'm pretty sure anytime he's frustrated, I think he just threw an interception against Bill Belichick. So
I played Sam Darnold in fantasy today. It did not go well for me.
And that's all the football we'll talk about, Bryce. I promise we're not mentioning anything else that happened today. I know you want us to stay away from football.
I have it. No, you can talk about 15 other games. You just can't talk about the 16th game that is off limits.
I don't want to even mention what the 16th game is, because then commenters will happen, and I don't want them to like tweet at you like, oh, by the way, this is the result of said 16th game.
So I just had somebody text me that's watching live, said there's 0 chance they'll get you to watch Midsummer.
Is this your friend Chris?
Yeah. Huh?
Is this your friend Chris? I can see Chris getting into some weird shit with movies.
No, it was somebody else, but yeah.
Yeah, if you were to watch Midsommar, that's one where like you would really just be like, what in the entire fuck? Because that's one where even I came out of the theater, I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? The next one like that is probably Nosferatu, which is the new Robert Eggers movie. I feel like that one's gonna be pretty wild, and I fucking love basically everything Eggers has done at this point. So yeah, we will be talking about that at some point.
Add The Witch to the list of movies I want to see Bryce have seen. Like I want to get your take on your thoughts on The Witch by Robert Eggers.
Some real strange things happening with goats in that movie, Bryce. Hey, you like farm animals? Like this is we're getting into your wheelhouse. We're closer. Right?
I feel like farming is not portrayed in a realistic light. And you like Yellowstone. Listen, I love Yellowstone. That's not real life. Dudes ain't flying their helicopters around their property, moving their cattle with a it's fun. It's interesting.
It's just your farming experience. How do we know that? How do we know that the cause, aka Kevin Costner, by the way, watched Horizon this weekend? That thing is a movie that exists in the world, and I don't even know that I'm happy that it exists, but it exists, and I want Kevin to finish his vision. We'll go with that. I hope he gets funding. Look, I don't know. Maybe the rich people in Montana have the helicopters, Bryce. Who knows?
They may have helicopters. They're not using them to move their cattle across their land.
Oh my goodness. That's
Last thing for
amazing.
me before you guys get the show started, just want to clarify, Bryce. When we said GOATs, we don't mean Michael Jordan or Patrick Mahomes. We mean actual real
Literal
GOATs.
farm
Yeah.
goats.
Yeah.
You just gave away the 16th game, Andrew.
What? I said Patrick Mahomes is a GOAT.
Well-
That happened in the Super Bowl. And that's more because I don't acknowledge the other guy that people think is the GOAT, even though he's a system quarterback for 20 years.
Oh
you know?
Lord, we could do a whole podcast here. This would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get into some basketball now. Andrew, you will be back later on to talk about the 7th team on our list that we're going to talk about, as well as do some trivia with Bryce and I, because that is something that's going to happen here. I'm going to try and guess answers, and Andrew will probably beat me in these answers. So it's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. Okay, Andrew, let's get to a 2-box. It's good to see you. We'll see you in like an hour. Okay, Bryce, I am ready to talk about the 7 teams that we definitely like expertly went through and picked last night. Really, like we compared lists, honestly, and they were somewhat similar in terms of like, I think we had, you named the Wizards and I sent you the gif of Michael Clark Duncan in Talladega Nights saying, "Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby." I'm sorry, Wizards fans. Like, there's just no way that, like, I will watch probably 5 of your first 10 games because I'm curious about Bub and I'm curious about Alex R. But like, I mean, dude, I'm not like gearing up to talk about the Wizards here, bud.
Who's the other team? I tried to put 2 teams that are kind of
The Hornets were the other one.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? If we want to go the direction of not just, contenders or teams that we think are in that weird space of in the playoffs, not in the playoffs, whatever, who are a couple teams that I'm at least interested to watch certain players on their teams. And for the Wizards, it was the 2 guys you mentioned. Like, I like Corey Kispert. Kuzma will be interesting if he doesn't get traded. And then with the Hornets, it was, I am fascinated to watch LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and what that is this year. So I just threw them out there.
Like I'm pretty interested in the Hornets as well. Like, another team like that is Portland, right? Like, I'm pretty interested in Portland and seeing how all of this frankly misshapen roster and like these random players all fit together and seeing if Scoot can take a nice little solid step forward after a summer and having gotten, 60 games of NBA experience. Right. But probably not in the top 7 of teams that I'm like really looking forward to. I don't think anybody's going to be really surprised about the number 1 team. And the way that we did this is basically just like the teams that, if we're watching, it's not like our all league pass list. It's not our, whatever list. I think it's just the teams we are most interested to see early in the season, what they look like, what's going on, figuring them out. Are they contenders? How long is it going to take for them to kind of gear up in one case, right? It was more that as opposed to, oh my God, like this is the best team in the league, or, oh my God, like this is, the most exciting team in the league. We're just interested in these teams and trying to figure out, hey, where do they sit in the hierarchy of the league? And how are they going to look whenever it really comes down to brass tacks and getting into regular season basketball?
And I think for a couple as well, I was like, what are the rosters going to look like? What do the rotations look like? Who plays with who in the front court? Is it matchup dependent? How quick do they gel together? I mean, I honestly thought about putting the Pelicans in there just for that reason. And
truly.
Because we've talked about that so much already, but it was like, that's a team I'm going to watch early because are they starting Zion at the 5? Are they not? Does CJ come off the bench? Who plays with the ball in their hands all the time? Is it still point Zion? All of those different things. And so I know for at least one of these teams we're going to talk about in the first 3, a lot of it is who ends up playing where, like who's in the, I mean, really 2 of them, to be honest. So I think I'm glad you brought up that because it's not the league pass teams. It's not the teams we think are the best. They're not even quote our teams, the teams we will watch the most. For me, it was like, I have questions, not necessarily negative questions, but I just wonder things about these teams.
That's completely where I'm at as well. I truly just want to know where these teams kind of fit in the hierarchy. And to your point on the Pelicans, that's honestly why I didn't pick the Pelicans for this. We just talked about them a lot. They could totally fit in the hierarchy of what we're talking about here. Like, easily one of the 10 teams I'm most interested in watching this season, probably in the top 7, if I'm being completely honest. We've just talked so much about the Brandon Ingram situation. We've talked so much about Point Zion. What does that look like with DeJounte Murray coming in? How do they make the roster? Like, you and I have talked about that so many times this summer. If you want to listen to us talk about the Pelicans, there are dozens of episodes. Please go back through the YouTube archive. By the way, go subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're watching live on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button while you're here. It's really, really helpful to everything that we're doing here.
And the other thing is follow on Twitter as well, guys. There's a new Game Theory podcast
There
Twitter account
is
that Andrew will be running. And so like now, obviously Sam and I quote tweet and whatever, but you can follow that Game Theory Twitter and get little cuts of the podcast and when we're going to record and all of that stuff as well.
Go over. The Twitter handle is Game Theory Game Theory Sam V. Andrew is doing a great job with that, even just like building that up. So go follow that thing over on Twitter. Okay, Bryce, let's start with the team that probably like won't be surprising to anybody, but I want to know exactly how good this team is going to be. It's Oklahoma City.
Yep.
The first team that I am excited to watch this season is Oklahoma City. And I think you also had Oklahoma City on your list, correct?
I did. Yeah, I did. 100%.
So they have a lot of new pieces for a team that we're all expecting to be this like 55 plus win borderline, juggernaut potential on both ends of the court with a top 3 player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and having added 2 of the top, frankly, 15 defenders in the NBA last season in Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. A team that was already quite successful defensively with Lou Dort and Chet Holmgren, also fitting certainly within that top 20-ish, top 15-ish defenders conversation last season as well. You have all of these great pieces. You have Jalen Williams coming in and continuing to take steps forward and forward and forward, an incredibly hard worker. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks like he's going to continue to be a top 3 player in the league. Chet Holmgren looks like he is the next star center who will be a, 5+ time, 7+ time all-star in the league, along with Victor Wembanyama in the Western Conference. But it's a lot of pieces, right? Like it's a lot of random stuff coming together here that we need to figure out a little bit. We need to kind of run through and understand how all these pieces are going to fit together, right?
Yeah, I mean, my question immediately is like, what do they end up doing with the starting lineup? You paid Hartenstein $30 million a year. Does he start? I mean, we talked about all the Josh Giddey stuff. Josh Giddey started 80 games last year for this team. So that, as excited as we are about their offseason and all of that, and as much as people talked about Giddey not being able to space the floor, Hartenstein doesn't space the floor either. Now he does a whole bunch of other things that this team absolutely needs. But so how does that look if him and Shed are on the floor together? I'm not necessarily worried about it, but that's still a non-floor spacer on a team that really values dribble, pass, and shoot. So what do they do with the starting lineup? Do they guys go in and out? Do they go smaller with Caruso? How much time does that then leave for Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins and Cason Wallace? Who is the big guys off the bench between Kenrick Williams and the other Jalen Williams? Does the J-Dub take a step forward? So I'm excited about this team. I think they're going to be awesome. I love their offseason. It's not negative questions in like, oh, I think they're in trouble. It's just questions of how does this fit together? Who plays with who? How does the hierarchy look on that team in terms of their role? And really, can they be as dominant as what I think they can be, especially in the regular season? Are they a 10.0 plus net rating team this season in the regular season and find a way to run away with the West that has a very deep, talented, Western Conference of 12, 13 teams?
Yeah. And, one of my significant questions with the Oklahoma City Thunder is, what do they look like in terms of their starting lineup? Is it that they have Isaiah Hartenstein as their 5, and then they have Chet Holmgren at the 4? Is it that they start Chet Holmgren at the 5 and bring Isaiah Hartenstein off the bench? Is it a situation where, frankly, they just decide, you know what we're going to do? Every time that we're playing a different team, right? Like if we're playing Denver, we're going to start Hartenstein and we're going to have him, deal with Jokic for 25 minutes a night. And he's the guy who's going to be starting, and we're going to line up match what other teams are doing. The thing that I always talk about in the playoffs when it comes to successful teams. They have different answers for different problems that you present, right? You also have incredible star power. Incredible star power is the most important thing. But I actually think that the second most important thing is having solutions for problems that other teams present based on lineups and matchups. To me, this Oklahoma City team, frankly, now has solutions for everything. Okay, we need to go small. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams. Those are your three core players that you're probably always going to have out on the court, right? Okay, we need to go small because, someone's going small around us. We still have Chet to protect the rim, but then we can put in Alex Caruso and Lou Dort, and we're going to have an elite level defense, and we're probably going to have an elite level offense because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out there and Jalen Williams is out there, and they're creating shots in a floor that is 5 out and well spaced. And then on defense, we're able to control the ball and have all sorts of different lineup mismatch problems where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can play the free safety on the defensive end. And then Alex Caruso and Lou Dort are going to be elite on-ball players against elite guards, and Lou Dort can deal with elite wings. Jalen Williams, frankly, is strong enough and big enough to deal with elite wings. They have solutions to going small. Okay, let's say we're running into Minnesota or Denver. We can bring in Isaiah Hartenstein, bring him with Chet Holmgren, and then have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and one of Alex Caruso, Lou Dort. Oh, by the way, we also have Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, both of whom signed these, bargain basement contracts this year. They look like long-term pieces off the bench for this team. And they're both completely competent and solid rotation players, right? But we say all of this knowing that there are just a lot of moving pieces here. And oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about the guy that went 10th overall last year, 12th overall, I'm sorry, in Cason Wallace, who is absolutely terrific at basketball and who is a monster defender at the point of attack and who knocks down shots and who can kind of create shots a little bit and hopefully continue to take a leap on his end. So that's a lot of guys. Most of these guys at this point are either, locked in place like Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, or they're guys who are under long-term contract and have gotten paid already, right? Like Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Isaiah Hartenstein, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The blend should be completely fine. The blend should work incredibly well. But it's a lot of new shit to figure out for a team that we're all just expecting is going to come in and win 55 games. Look, to be clear, this is my pick to win the title coming into the year. I don't think that I've hid that really. But I think we would be fooling ourselves to not say that they have things to figure out early on throughout the course of their first 20 or so games.
And these first two teams we're going to talk about, I think it's a lot of, in a positive way, they have things to figure out. The next team is going to be, there's a lot of young talent, but they got to figure out how they're going to play it all and how it meshes together. With this Thunder team, it's a little bit older. They're further along in the steps of the plan. But I think the biggest question for me is Chet and Hartenstein offensively, right? Because Chet has essentially played as the 5 all last year. I know there are some minutes with one of the other two bigs, but how does that look? I'm not saying I'm worried, Sam. So I don't want Thunder fans to listen to this and be like, oh, it's going to be, it probably is going to be fine. I'm just saying I'm interested to see how they do it. Do you use Isaiah in the ball screen to short roll, and then Chet is either in the corner to catch and shoot, or, can cut in and catch a lob? Or do you keep Chet in the pick and pop? Or, I'm just interested to see how those two guys work together offensively, because it is a little different than playing 5 out. In terms of Hartenstein not being able to space the floor. He can't exactly play with the ball like what Giddey did, even though he is a good passer out of short roll situations. I'm just interested to see how Dagnall and staff make that work, if they have to change things a little bit when you are playing those two guys together. Now, defensively, I have no concerns whatsoever, especially whenever they're using it against big lineups. It's just offensively, do they have to change things just a little bit when they're playing those guys in the front court?
To Bryce's point about just like minutes, right? In the regular season last year, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren together, big Jalen Williams, not Santa Clara Jalen Williams. We're talking about Arkansas Jalen Williams. They only played 92 minutes together, and they had a 4.5 net rating, but they actually gave up 115 points per 100 possessions, and they scored 119.
Interesting.
Jalen Williams from Arkansas is like a drastically different player than what Isaiah Hartenstein is.
Oh yeah.
Jalen is the guy that can like space the floor a little bit. He's a tough physical rebounder, obviously takes charges at a really high level. Isaiah is okay, we're going to use him as a screener on offense and use him in dribble handoffs, and then we're going to short roll him. He has that beautiful little jump stop floater game with the left hand. The fun thing that I've been wondering about, and maybe this is just like completely me losing my, gourd a little bit. Do they give Isaiah Hartenstein a little bit of freedom to shoot threes? Because I don't know if you remember when Isaiah was a prospect, he was a guy that like people thought might be able to shoot when he was like really, really young. And then if you look like in 2022 and 2023, he took like 67 threes over the course of those 2 seasons. I'm not sitting here saying that like he's going to be some great shooter, but generally in this offense, the Thunder do like to give guys freedom if they feel open to just fire. I'm not sitting here again saying that Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be the guy that, really just goes out there and drills threes or anything. If he took 75 threes this year, I don't think I would be stunned by that. Just given the freedom that Mark Daigneault allows these guys to have on offense, just purely. I'm not sitting here saying that it would even be all that successful. Like he might only make like 20 of them or something, but I wonder if that happens a little bit. And I wonder if when he plays with Chet, they're like, okay, the way that we're going to make this work is Chet's going to play the 4 and he's going to space in the corner, and Isaiah is going to be our guy in the screen, and he's going to pick and pop. And if he has an opening and, if he's trailing from behind the play, maybe we will let him fire.
Yeah. I mean, so I hadn't considered this, but looking at his 3 G League seasons, he had a year 1920 where he shot over 3 per game. The year before that, a little over 2 per game. Now, it wasn't great percentage. It was under 30% both seasons, but obviously there was something there. And this is the stuff we're talking about, right, Sam? Early in the year, I wouldn't blame the Thunder. I think I would actually encourage the Thunder. Let's see it, even if it's just from the corner or just in pick and pops or only when he's on the floor, whatever. See if he can, just make enough to be respectable or keep the flow of the, keep it spaced and all of that. I think that's what early in the year is going to be for the Thunder, is kind of figuring some of these things out. And because of that, it may not look as good as what we're expecting it to look very first to start the year, because you are adding in some new players and I don't want to say chemistry, but you got to figure out how to play off of each other and what works best, and maybe just try some things out to see if it works or not.
And look, like I have complete belief that Jalen Williams is going to be able to come in. Jalen Williams, Santa Clara, we're talking about now, is going to be able to step in and be like the true second option as a ball handler, right? You can say that they have Alex Caruso, but like Caruso can do a little bit of that, and he's a really good ball mover. But this is now like they are putting an immense amount more on Jalen Williams' shoulders, because losing Josh Giddey and losing his ball handling ability, like, is a real thing that they have done here. And in my opinion, they have done it to empower Jalen Williams. We see Jalen Williams, for instance, like run Oklahoma City's second unit typically with Chet Holmgren. That is like a real thing that happens regularly. But I'm really interested to see, is there any sort of diminishing return on the offense by and large, with removing Giddey and putting in Alex Caruso? Obviously, there are going to be immense returns on the defense. I think like this was already a great defensive team last year. I think I would be surprised with them finishing outside of the top. I mean, they finished 4th in defense and added 2 of the best defenders in the league. I think I would be surprised if they finished outside of the top 3 on defense this year. I really would. Like barring injury, right? Like if Isaiah and Chet go down. And by the way, like here's the other thing with Oklahoma City, thinking this through as we talk about it, they have so many answers for potential injuries too. Like the guy that can't lose is obviously Shea, and you probably can't lose Jalen Williams now either. But even if they were to lose, worst case scenario, you lose J-Dub for 15 games, right? we still have Shea, we still have Aaron Wiggins, we still have, obviously Topic, we assume won't play much this year. They have that might be like the one place where they're a little bit light is true. Like we're going out to create shots, but I mean, what if Case and Wallace takes like a big step? Like that's the thing. If Case and Wallace like takes a big step, they actually don't, I think, have many holes here. If he can like be a ball handler and like shot creator, that's like a whole different game now.
J-Dub doesn't even have to expend as much energy this year. He doesn't have to take even this number 2 matchup, right? Like you were
not on defense. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That's what I meant. My bad. I should have specified. You were going through the lineup earlier with Caruso and Dort on the floor. And I'm like, goodness gracious. The other team's third best offensive player is going to be miserable playing the Thunder because he still gets Jalen Williams on him with Chet and or Hartenstein behind him. And so
Yeah.
like my point was now there's more energy to go play offense for him because he's not having to even take the defensive matchups he was taking last year. And so that's where maybe there's a little bit of give and take. I was always impressed with J-Dub last year when SGA went off the floor and he was running the show. It looked pretty good. And I don't imagine it's going to take a step back.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Do you have any other notes here on Oklahoma City and why we're excited to see what they look like in 2024-25?
No, I think that covered most of the questions and kind of just ideas that I wanted to cover for them.
Okay. Next up, this one was both of our team. Like, but I feel like, I don't know. This is one where like, I'm just like really excited about it. I have ideas on what to expect from Houston this year. I'm really excited about what the Houston Rockets are going to look like this year. Like I said, I think on a previous show, I will watch probably the first like 12 games that Houston plays, like every single one, just because I want to figure out what exactly the situation looks like. I want to figure out what the kids look like. Are they going to let Reed Shepherd, be the primary backup point guard? How do they use a Men Thompson who used to play more of a point guard role with Overtime Elite, but transitioned into more of a do it all, frankly, like a Michael Clayton, like Mr. Fix-It, basically for, the second half of the season last year for Houston. I am so fascinated by this team. I am so interested in every single thing that they're going to do. Jabari Smith is a guy that like doesn't get talked about, and he averaged 14 and 8 last year as a 20-year-old in the NBA. Alperen Şengün continues to take strides and take leaps forward. They have contract year situations potentially, depending on what they do with their extensions, which, by the way, go listen to the last episode. We talked about Houston at length. Keith Smith and I talked about their extension situation, their cap situation next summer, what they could do with Şengün and Jalen Green's situation. They might end up having contract year situations from Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, and frankly, Fred VanVleet as well, because Fred VanVleet has a team option next season. So they might want to try and figure out, is he the guy moving forward, or, are we going to try and have cap space next summer for some reason, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention those guys as well. I think as I count here, there's it's a team, you have like 10 guys who I think all are going to expect to play. And that's not counting one of the backups.
I think it's more than that, to be honest with you.
5, 6, 7, 8.
So I'll just list them off. Fred VanVleet definitely expects to play next year. Dylan Brooks especially expects to play next year. Steven Adams, I would imagine, expects to play next year. Jalen Green certainly expects to play. Jabari Smith certainly expects to play. Amen Thompson expects to play. I would say Şengün certainly expects to play. Tari Eason should expect to play. Cam Whitmore is going to expect to play. I would say that like Reed Shepherd should probably expect to play.
I counted him.
I would say Jayshawn Tate and Jock Lawndale also expect to play. So I'm not saying that like they might be in, they might be out of the rotation, but like, again, both of those guys in contract years, Jayshawn Tate has shown he can be like a valuable, versatile wing who has really helped them with ball movement and, a lot of different things during his time in Houston. And then Lawndale's coming off of an awesome Olympics. and honestly, frankly, like a pretty good end of his season last season as well.
Yeah, so there's 10 guys there, and that's not counting Adams and Londell. Like, I just don't know which you're going to play or how they're going to decide that. And so, again, this is a good problem. We've said this so many times when we did the under 24. We talked about all the different Rockets players that were on that list in some capacity. It will just be that's not an easy position for Ime to decide who's going to play, what are the rotations, and kind of who meshes best together, right? Is Fred and Jalen the best backcourt, combination, or is it actually somebody else? And so do you change who starts? Do you stagger? Who are the guys on the wing? Who fits best off of Şengün? Because here's the thing. I think I'll be interested in this. I think the most important thing for this team is to find out what Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün are. I think a lot of people know, but you got to have that answer by the end of this season with both of those guys, assuming nothing happens before the season. And so you got to put them in the best situation for both of them to be successful, so you know what to do with them going into the offseason.
It is by far the most timely issue facing the
Timely is
Rockets,
a good word. That's
I
a good
would
call.
say.
Yeah.
Is Jalen Green the guy we saw in March last year, or is he the guy we saw before March last year, where he was like inconsistently closing games and maybe not necessarily a critical, player for them moving forward? Because like I said, there were plenty of times last year where Jalen Green would, be out for the entire fourth quarter, frankly. It wasn't like a wildly regular occurrence, but it happened more than you would like to see for a guy that, you're making a decision on as to whether or not to spend $30 million a year on, right? So trying to determine who those guys are, and we kind of know who Şengün is. We know that he's going to be like an all-star. Really, it's Jalen Green more than anything. But with Alperen Şengün, if you're going to give him a max, figuring out what rosters work best around him is really important. Figuring out. So Amen Thompson, I would argue, and part of this could have just been purely due to opportunity, right? Because he got more opportunity when Şengün went out. I would like to see more of Alperen Şengün and Amen Thompson playing together and understand exactly how that works. It can totally work. I'm not saying that it's not going to work. I would like to know more about how it works and how they see it working before I make a crazy, financial decision on this, right?
No, that's a good point with Şengün. It's not so much of like, is he good or not, or how good? We know he's really good. It may be like, what level of good, or what exactly do you need around him if he's going to be the hub of your offense or something like that.
It could truly be that you find you need 5 shooters around Şengün at all times, right?
Yes.
And with Amen Thompson and with, frankly, Tari Eason has made shots throughout the course of his career, but if you look at the percentage of guarded versus unguarded shots that Tari Eason takes, it's very clear that like opposing teams don't see him as a shooter, and he does not really get guarded in that way. Trying to figure out, okay, who are the guys that we have, and do we value Alperen Şengün more than the guys we have, right? Do we value potentially different types of lineups, different types of play styles than what Şengün gives us? It's not to say Alperen Şengün isn't great. He's unbelievable at basketball. The way he thinks through the game, the guy is, a savant in so many ways. But they have so many young guys. They have so many interesting dudes that they arguably might have like more optionality in terms of how they go about building their roster in their future, maybe than any team in the league right now. Like they might find out by the end of this year that Reed Shepherd is like, that's a serious guy, right? That changes things.
You got to find out what he is, right? Like we haven't talked about winning. I know Rockets fans want to win, and I get it. I understand. But to me, this season is more about like, what if Reed is a dude? That changes potentially what you do with Fred VanVleet. What if Cam Whitmore is what you and I thought he was coming into the draft, and the knee's going to hold up, and then you have that answer? Or here's the other thing. Like, let's play the other side of the coin. We're always very positive about the Rockets. I think it's fair to, what if you find out these dudes aren't what you think they are? Maybe you've only find out a couple are, that Şengün is with a couple other guys. You have a lot of things to go make a trade. What if a star comes available, Sam, that you're like, this is the time to strike? Like, it's a younger player that maybe fell out of favor, and we can trade a couple of our young guys and maybe a future pick or something and go get him. It's just why they're fascinating to me. There's so much talent. There's so much young talent. They're good. They're competitive. They're going to win. But you said it perfectly. There's so much optionality with how this thing looks moving forward. There's so many forks in the road. They can go so many different directions, and it's fascinating. I'm so excited to watch it play out.
Yeah, to the point on like how do Alperen and Şengün, how do Alperen and Şengün and Amen Thompson play together? Last year they played 374 minutes together, and they were a minus 3.15 net rating when they were together, because the team gave up 115 points per 100 possessions and only scored 111.9. Right. So, and again, I'm not saying that, don't freak out, Houston fans. I'm not saying they can't play together. I'm saying that these are two really young guys with skill sets that, neither of which involve shooting in this case. And I think it's worth trying to determine, what does an offensive fit look like? Can you run weird dribble handoffs with them? Can you try and run some weird things where like Amen Thompson is constantly back cutting and you have Şengün at the top, and that's how you're spacing the court. But to do that, you probably need like a really high level floater game, or you need Şengün to be able to hit mid-range and 3-point jumpers. There are just a lot of things to try and figure out. Jalen Green, right? His big leap in March last year, and I'm not saying it was because of this that the leap happened, but his moment last year by and large came after Şengün missed a number of games, right? He didn't really play in March. So what do those two look like together on the court? And frankly, just who are the guys you're building around?
Yeah.
You have so many options here, but there's only one ball. Cam Whitmore likes to shoot, guys. Like, Cam Whitmore is a guy that I love. I know Bryce loves. We both had him top 5 in the 2023 NBA draft. He looked last season like a guy that very well, should have been ranked in the top 5 at times of the 2023 NBA draft. But where does he get shots when you have Jalen Green in a contract year, Alperen Şengün in a contract year, Fred VanVleet in a contract year? Dylan Brooks, was not as shot happy as what I had. He played the role I hoped that he would play for Houston last year. Dylan will at times like to shoot the ball. There are just Jabari Smith is a guy that is entering an extension year potentially. I would imagine that he would like to take a step forward, and he's a guy that's like, I don't know if it's like gotten enough play that like Jabari is like a very serious minded individual who like really wants to get better at basketball. And like, I think is the kind of mentality that he's going to keep improving at basketball. And, I think there's a chance that he could take a leap this year. They have so many guys that might just take a leap. And oh, by the way, Tari Eason missed the last however many games last year, 50 games or whatever. And he's going to play 20 minutes at least a game this year because he deserves it. He's one of the most productive players per minute in the NBA when he's on the court. So they have so many dudes. It's so hard to determine where all of this goes in Houston.
And young guys that are trying to prove themselves, some guys in contract years, all of that. It's just going to be a lot to massage and figure out and keep. I don't even want to say happy because like, I don't know that guys would be unhappy. It's things to figure out while also trying to win games because they were a competitive basketball team last year, obviously. And so it will be interesting to see how they manage it. And because of that, like you said, there's going to be, I think between the two of us, we're going to watch a lot of Houston Rockets games and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it really is. Oh, by the way, like Ime Udoka is there, and Ime, to me at this point, looks like an awesome coach.
Yeah,
like
100%.
His year in Boston and, everything that happened with him off the court ends up with him departing Boston. And now we're here in Houston, and he led them to a 41-win season last year. He looks like a really, really, like might be a great coach based off of what we've seen in his 2 years. It's not an enormous sample yet, and he didn't even make the playoffs last year with Houston, but his 2 years in charge of a team, I would argue, have been exceedingly positive to this point. So, does he continue to grow and showcase that he is like a real, like he might be Ty Lue, right? Like he might be like a serious basketball coach. So Houston is in an incredibly positive situation, but this is when it starts to get harder, is when you're trying to level up, right? And oh, by the way, like one thing we've talked about with Houston, and we'll move on after this, is do they have like a number one guy?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily they have that undeniable, we've got a dude that, we think can lead us to a title, like a superstar level player. I think Alperen Şengün looks like an all-star. I think that, Reed Shepherd has real star qualities. I think that Amen Thompson has all-star qualities. But to be a dude, you have to be able to be like a 3-level scorer, to be a high-level processor, to be so you have to be able to be a solid defender. You have to do so many different things. They have a lot of guys that do some of those things, but don't combine it all into one player. Like we project Victor Wembanyama to the dominance that Luka Doncic has shown throughout the course of his career. The incredible growth that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has continued to show, the ability that Nikola Jokic has shown to be special in that regard. Maybe Şengün has that kind of jump in him. I am skeptical of that, but maybe he does, right? I would love to see it if he does. They're just a lot of, they need the number one guy, and I don't know that they have him yet, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and again, like that's one thing we'll find out. Like, can Şengün be that absolute hub of the offense that is that level of player? It's just hard to give him those keys when you also need to find out what is Jalen Green, and you're trying to win games. So then Fred's going to play with the ball in his hands. And as you mentioned, like if Cam Whitmore's not getting a bunch of shots, I mean, I don't dislike everything about the rest of Cam's game, but like that's the thing I was most excited about was him getting buckets. And so it'll just be, you have to navigate all of those different things and figure it out while you're trying to win games, be competitive, keep people happy, but find out some of these answers to your team and specifically your young players.
Yep, that is right. Okay. Next, the Denver Nuggets. I am really interested in what Denver looks like after losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, after what we saw from Jamal Murray in the Olympics, having now had Nikola Jokic play at the Olympics after a long season where they went to the semifinals and played like a very competitive series against Minnesota. Nikola Jokic played 79 games last season. That's 91 total throughout the course of his season last year. Total minutes on Jokic last season were in the ballpark of like 3,200. In the year before that, it was over 3,000. The year before that, it was like right around like 2,700, 2,600. And the year before that, it was like 2,800, right? Given Jokic's game and given the way he plays, he's probably someone that can take that minute load on and just be like totally fine. But we have occasionally seen with Jokic, he comes into the season a little bit off and he works himself into a season. And even when Jokic is off, he's still going crazy and, going for 22, 8 and 8, right? But the way that this Denver team is structured, especially if Jamal Murray, who again, like didn't get much rest this offseason playing for Canada at the Olympics, the way that Jamal Murray looks, and now you're counting on a number of younger players, I really want to see how Denver maneuvers early in the season and how they go about replacing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, replacing the minutes that they've lost, maybe trying to get Jokic a blow here and there if they can, right? Because, 3,000 plus minutes last season into an Olympic season. They just have like a number of things that I think they have to figure
Did
out
you
early
mention
on.
Russell Westbrook yet and how
I
that's
haven't
gonna play
yet,
out?
right? Like that's another one. Like honestly, as we were talking, I had thought about it, but like hadn't really even like considered like that's a whole other fit that you have to work through is Russ. Like he is his own thing.
Yeah, you have all these young guys that are going to have to play, and then you bring in the personality and the dynamic that Russ is. I think my biggest question about this team is, can they even make enough threes? Can they even shoot enough threes? Do they need to shoot this many threes to keep an offense at the level good enough to compete at the level they want to be? So, Sam, from last year, they were 30th in three-point attempt rate, by the way.
Yeah.
They lost 3 of their top 7 players in terms of three-point attempts in the regular season and playoffs. So Porter Jr. and Murray were 1-2. KCP was 3rd. Guess who was 4th? Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
And then Justin Holiday was 7th after Jokic and Strawther. Strawther played 50 games. I think Julian Strawther is absolutely an X factor for this team. He has to, at the very least, be able to stay on the floor and shoot a bunch of threes, have gravity, and create spacing because they're going to need it. Or Christian Brown really ups his volume and Peyton Watson takes some sort of step forward. I know threes aren't everything for this team because of Jokic, but you got to have some floor spacing for that to work.
But so like I will say though, threes are important for this. Like that's not everything, like you said, but having guys that have the threat to make jumpers, like Christian Brown to me is even more important than Julian Strawther, because if Christian Brown is just like a guy where teams go, okay, we'll get a late closeout, like we're going to sag into the paint anytime that Jokic like dives into the paint or is like on the block or is even at the elbows, we're just going to sag off and we're going to sag off Christian and we're going to try and bother Jokic and we're going to stop entry passes and we're going to try and stop his drives and any number of things. That makes life really hard on Nikola Jokic. I truly am not totally sure what this offense is going to look like. And oh, by the way, like we talked about Jamal Murray a little bit, right?
Yeah, we did.
When Jamal Murray signed that contract extension, what was that? We talked about that last Sunday, maybe, right?
Yep.
Look, like I have my concerns on what that deal looks like longer term. But even in the short term, he hasn't looked great for the last 8 months or so, just in terms of physically hasn't looked great. And typically you go, okay, great. Like he had an off season off. Hopefully the knee, hopefully everything can kind of just like get into order. He's going to have like a month off, month and a half before training camp, right? That's not a ideal situation, I would say. If I was them, like I honestly wondered, like, is there a world where we could try and like slow down his progress and maybe make sure that he doesn't end up in a situation where like he's gotten paid, so like it doesn't really matter at this point. Can we like slow that down a little bit and make it so that, you know, he might not play like as many back-to-backs and might not, you know, have to put that much stress on his knee so that by the time January, February rolls around, he's good. But the antithesis of that is they probably need to get some rhythm early so that they can figure out what the roster around Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic looks like, right?
And the West is really good. So, like, even if you wanted to say, like, even if you fully believe in Russell Westbrook and he's your starting point guard in those, who's the guard off the bench? Like, is Jalen Pickett ready?
It's Russell Westbrook. It's Russell Westbrook.
And that's it. I mean, and like you have Trey Alexander on a 2, like you're talking about real young guys with a coach who already doesn't want to play young guys and is going to be forced to play some because that's just what they've given him this year. It's just, they need Murray to play. Like, I mean, that's what I almost worry more about them in the regular season than I do in the playoffs. Like they get to the playoffs, and I think I'll probably still believe in them depending on how it looks. I just wonder how they get through this regular season where they've lost those guys. They lost the one rookie who I thought could give them some minutes in Deron Holmes II. It's just like, do they have the depth? We just talked about two teams that have all this depth, right? And then we go to the Nuggets and we're struggling to count 7 or 8 players who we really believe in and have proven themselves even in an NBA regular season.
So the Westbrook thing is interesting because the one thing I think Russ like can do is give them like real minutes and like be an innings eater for them,
and energy, and
bring energy, bring aggression. But he is a player that it takes a minute to figure out how to play with, because he is, and I don't say this negatively about Russ. I think people know that, the people that listen to the show know I'm like an enormous like Russ fan by and large, but he plays a style unto himself where he dominates the ball. Even like in LA the last couple of years, like he dominates things with his pure aggression and energy in a way that is confounding sometimes early on in his tenure somewhere, where like you even just look at his usage numbers, right? Like people would say, oh, like, yeah, like the last couple of years, he's taken the foot off the gas a little bit and he's, slowed down. Well, like the year where he was with the Lakers and Clippers combined after he got traded, or in mid-season trade, he was a 27 usage guy. Last year, even playing with Kawhi and James Harden and Paul George, he was a 25 usage guy. It takes some, like, he's not just going to come in and play off the ball and cut off a Jokic and do that, especially early on. Like, he's going to have the ball in his hands because that's what Russ does. He has the ball in his hands, and that will really help the non-Jokic minutes, I think. This is a team that really desperately just needs innings eaters when Jokic isn't on the court. They need guys who can take on usage. Like Reggie Jackson couldn't really do it. I think Russ is an upgrade on Reggie Jackson for the non-Jokic minutes.
Sure.
But I think they kind of need Russ a little bit for the Jokic minutes as well. And you need Jokic and him to get like a lot of reps together to figure out how exactly that's going to work, I think.
Well, how it works together is Russ, we talked about this. We talked about him almost playing like an Aaron Gordon type of role where he's like cutting off of Jokic and running some fun, like Jokic with Russ screening and short rolling and then exploding to the rim out of the short roll, or making a pass or something like that. Or getting out in transition, right? Almost playing like wide receiver, let Jokic throw it down the floor and get out and get an easy bucket in transition. That's how it has to work, because it's not Russ spacing the floor. That's not what it's going to be. Just a little teaser to the trivia later. I actually happen to have it pulled up just for reference for people. This past season, there were only 37 players who had a usage percentage greater than 25. So that gives people an idea of, in a random year last season, that's how many players had that type of usage percentage that you brought up in the Lakers Clippers years with Russ.
I mean, it's a really, like, he plays on the ball a lot. It is what it is. What do you think Denver's best lineup is going to be? Is it just going to be the Murray, Brown?
I think so. Yeah.
MPJ, Gordon, Jokic combo. Is there a chance it's Strother instead of Brown? I don't think so.
There's no way it's not the 4. It's just the argument of like, do people somehow, like, can you talk yourself into Russ being in there? I can't. It's Strother if Brown can't adjust to high volume 3-point shooting and isn't like just really, really good defensively. The thing with Strother is, like, let's say he's shooting 38% from 3 on 6 attempts. Who's taking the primary perimeter defensive matchups? It's got to be him, right?
I think it probably does have to be Brown, for what it's worth. I think he's probably going to have to take the toughest defensive matchups.
Yeah. And so, like, if Brown's off and Strother's in for the shooting, is it Strother then trying to do that while he's spacing the floor? Because I don't think you can put Gordon on the guys we're trying to talk about, in terms of Gordon.
And the best teams have multiple options, and you want Gordon on the bigger guy.
Yes.
Right. So like Aaron Gordon might guard Anthony Edwards. I think like that's a
Sure.
real
Yeah. But he's
distinct
not, you don't want
possibility,
him
but
chasing Steph around or
no.
whoever, Trey Young, or, maybe he can, take the Anthony Edwards match. But I think that's going to be Brown. Brown's just got to.
But like Anthony or Aaron Gordon would take on the Jalen Williams matchup against Oklahoma City.
I agree with
And
that.
honestly, probably Christian Brown is going to have to deal with Shea, for instance, right?
Yep. I think that's the best lineup. Like, I think what their starting lineup, is going to be is probably what their best lineup is going to be.
Yeah. And like Christian Brown, through everything in his career so far has been a really good defender. Christian Brown being asked to consistently deal with the best guys in the league night after night in the way that KCP had to deal with him. That's a different assignment than what we've seen. Here's my last question. Is there a world where like we're underestimating Michael Porter Jr. just like taking a leap as he gets like a little bit more offensive usage potentially? Like maybe he takes on like KCP last year, for instance, took how many shots per game as I pull it up? He took 7.7 shots per game. Christian Brown took 5.9. So like, I would guess that more than anything, those 5.9 shots, are up for grabs, maybe more than the 7.7. But is there a world where Michael Porter Jr. takes like a little bit of a leap forward? And we've seen him do this before. Like he has been capable of taking on more usage, right? Like he averaged 19 points a game during his second season, his third season in the NBA, but his second season that he played after he missed his rookie year due to the back injury. Like this was a guy that we thought coming into the NBA, and look, I get it that the athleticism has been diminished a little bit. Not a little bit, like the flexibility and everything. Like even if you watch Michael Porter Jr. in high school, you understand what I'm talking about. Like he was a different cat in high school athletically than what he is now. But is there a world with like a summer off where he maybe gets a chance to come in and be a little bit more of an offensive option, especially if they need to tamp down a little bit early on, what Jamal Murray does?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible. I hadn't considered that as much. It would really like his efficiency the last couple of years have been awesome, like 48, 49, 40-ish. I mean, for his career, he's 50, 40, 81, I mean, and so it's really about instead of taking 13 shots a game and 6.8 threes, can you take 16 shots a game and 8 threes and still have that efficiency and still go rebound the way he did last season where he averaged 7 and be at least, try to be as close to neutral as possible on the defensive end? Then like that would be a huge leap. Maybe that's the factor here that we're not considering as much as we should. As like he comes in as just this explosive offensive player that's a step beyond what we've seen over the last couple of years. That would be a path potentially.
I think that's like a path that could lead to them having more success, right? They have different pathways, but that's what makes them so interesting. They have all of these young guys. They have the Russell Westbrook factor. This isn't to say that the Nuggets are going to be bad or that they're only going to win 43 games or whatever. I mean, if they lost Jokic, like, all bets are off, right? But this isn't to say that we think they're going to be bad, but we expect the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic to contend at the highest levels of the NBA, point blank. How they go about doing that is going to be interesting. And like, frankly, can they do that after losing KCP and counting more on the kids is a real fun question for us, I think.
Agreed. Yep.
Okay. Team number 4 that we're going to talk about here. It is the San Antonio Spurs. And look, yes, 90% of this is Victor Wembanyama. 90% is Victor trying to figure out what he can be. What is he capable of becoming? What is he going to be in his second season, right? We just saw him go toe-to-toe with Team USA at the Olympics in the gold medal match. The level that he was at late in his rookie season was pretty staggering, frankly. He was pretty obviously a top 20 player in the league already. If you wanted to go higher than that, like I would hear out a case for it, but I feel quite strongly he's going to be all NBA quality this year. What does that mean? If I told you Victor Wembanyama was going to be an all NBA player this year, what do you think that means for San Antonio as a team overall?
I mean, I think for him to be all NBA, how many games did they win last year?
They won somewhere in the I would have guessed like high 20s,
20.
right?
Spurs won 22.
22.
If they win 35 games, I think that's enough to get him on all NBA, assuming the individual performances that we're talking about, right? Like mid 20s scoring, double digit rebounds, over 3 blocks, defensive player of the year type stuff. Like if they win 30 games, will people give him all NBA if they only quote unquote make an 8-win improvement?
I think it's possible. I don't know is kind of the answer I have
think
on that.
35,
I'm not totally sure.
35 is close enough to 500 and a big enough jump that I think people would then be able to. Maybe even like 32, like a 10-win jump, and he just plays out of his mind like we're talking about. I think that could get him all NBA. I think they got to get it 32 to 35.
Here's what I would say. Over their last 22 games last year, the Spurs went 10-12, right?
Okay.
That's not like a terrible team. And in that time, they beat some pretty decent teams, right? Like they beat Oklahoma City, they beat Indiana, they beat Phoenix, they beat the Knicks, they beat the Pelicans, they beat Denver late in the season, right? So I'm not going to rule out that once we saw Victor take that like big leap, that could be closer to their level than what people think. I just wonder if it might be a little bit more consistent night in, night out because of some of the other guys.
Yeah. So, and over those 22 games, he averaged, 23.5 on 46, 33, 77, 12 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 6 stocks, 1.5 steals, and 4.5 blocks.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That sounds like a potentially all NBA player.
That's pretty solid in my opinion. But beyond Victor, right?
Yeah.
I am interested to see what the rest of this team looks like. What does Chris Paul have left?
Exactly.
Does Devin Vassell take a leap? Does Keldon Johnson, I think Keldon Johnson kind of is what he is at this point, but can Keldon Johnson, like now that he has, Chris Paul in the starting lineup, in all likelihood, it seems like, with Trey Jones off the bench, probably next to Keldon Johnson coming off the bench, right? Does that lead to him being like one of the best 6 men in the league? Like, I think that's like a real possibility for Keldon Johnson, right?
Wait, what's your starting lineup? CP3, Vassell.
Yep.
Barnes, Sohan, and Victor.
That was my guess, but that is what that is, right? Okay. That is a guess. And then your backups are Trey Jones, Steph Castle, Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins. And then like whatever of the
Branham,
Wesley. Yeah. Like those guys.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And look, I say that the reason I say that my guess is that it's Sohan over Keldon Johnson is that Sohan started 74 games last year or 73 games last year, and Keldon Johnson started 27. So I'm kind of assuming that Sohan, is their guy that they will start.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I think this team is interesting even outside of that. Like, would they be on this list if Victor wasn't on it? No, like obviously not.
Absolutely not.
But Chris Paul at 39, here's the thing that's interesting about it's not just Chris Paul, but also is he this stabilizing point guard that we were all begging for last year to give this team, so we felt like we could really evaluate specifically Victor, but the team in general. And then you do have a 24-year-old Vassell, 25-year-old Keldon Johnson. Steph Castle is a guy you were really high on this last draft. I wasn't quite as high, but still a top 5 guy for me. And so you theoretically, I think maybe even more than but you have enough vets and a star around those guys. You can see like, what is Devin Vassell? Like there's a quote, can Devin Vassell be the number 2 guy to Victor? Is he the number 3 guy? Is he
Yep.
even that high? You're like, what is the answer there? Does Sohan even work with Victor, Sam? Like, is this a guy? Can you play these 2 guys together? Or does his lack of shooting take away everything that Victor does offensively? Like all the space he needs to work with? Can you play crazy big or do you not be able? Like, I just think there's all those things you can figure out. And by having guys like Barnes and CP3 and Tyus Jones, you have enough of the vets to get those answers with real NBA level rotation and competitiveness.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. And look, like last year, the Spurs started 3-17 when they did like the bullshit Jeremy Sohan at point guard stuff. And then they had Zach Collins, like still starting with Victor. If you take away those 3-17 numbers, right, they are 19-43, which is still not an awesome record, right? Nobody's saying it is, but they were much more competitive and much better in that time, right? Like they were very, very good in Victor's minutes, right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think this team's going to be like some incredible basketball team this year. I probably don't even think they're going to make the play-in tournament, if I'm being honest. I think there are enough teams in the West outside of them that are really great that will still be ahead of them. Like Harrison Barnes couldn't move his feet on defense last year. Just let's be transparent and realistic about it. But tying him to Jeremy Sohan and tying him to, different solid defensive players, having Victor Wembanyama behind Harrison Barnes versus Domantas Sabonis is a little bit of a different thing for Barnes, right? Yeah. And Barnes is smart enough to at least angle guys into like different positions where they will be disadvantaged on offense, right? Again, I don't think this team's going to be like great by any stretch of the imagination. They are going to be exciting to watch because they have Victor Wembanyama, and they are going to be interesting to watch because they have a number of kids like Vassell, like Steph Castle, like who am I missing here off the top of my head? Jeremy Sohan for sure.
Sohan.
See, like I guess I wasn't even like considering Keldon because Keldon's like 25 at this point, but like Sohan to me is so interesting still.
Sure. Yeah.
If he ever shoots it, he's like an incredible basketball player.
Yeah.
Asking him to shoot might be silly. Honestly, like might be very silly, but I don't know. He took 3 threes a game last year and shot 31%. And it's a significant improvement on the year before, which was a significant improvement on the year before when he was at Baylor and like didn't look like he was ever going to shoot it. So I don't know. I like this San Antonio team. I think that, having the Sohan and Wembanyama combination on defense is probably going to lead to a top 10 defense for them, right? They were 22nd in defense last year, but if you look at kind of what their, arrow was over the course of the year, it got way better, especially once they moved Wembanyama to the center position. So maybe it's like a top 13 defense.
Sam, it was an awful start for the season. Like their start to the season isn't remembered because of what the Pistons did, but during the Pistons' historic losing streak, San Antonio lost 18 straight and 28 of 30 after I think they started out 2-1 or something like that. So it was just a dreadful start. And then, then it was competent basketball there late, as you mentioned at the top.
Yeah. Like it was a truly, really, really bad, really, really bad time for San Antonio early on, but they were 11th in defense in March. They were, what were they? They were, I'm looking up the numbers, 20th in defense in February. And then in April, they were, what were they in defensive rating? 3rd in defense in April. So, you kind of average that out. They were like a borderline top 10 defense over the last 3 months of the season. So I don't know. Like I'm just saying that I think this Spurs team is going to be exciting to watch. I don't think they're going to be a great basketball team. I think they're going to be a really, really exciting team to watch though, because there's a chance Victor averages like 26, 13 and 4 blocks and 2 steals and takes a leap as a passer and, plays basketball in a way that we've like never really seen before.
Yep.
Okay. Before we move on to the next team. Shout out to our friends over at Hungry Root. Hungry Root is a fantastic meal service. As you guys know, my schedule was jam-packed last week. I was at the NBL Blitz over in Gold Coast. We hadn't really talked about the way that ended up and talked about Alex Tui, but we should at the end of this show, Bryce. Look, because I'm on the road so much, it's hard to meal plan. It's hard to figure out different options where I can eat relatively healthy, where I can grocery shop, where I can, figure out what's going in and out of my body at certain times. But all of that has changed with Hungry Root. Hungry Root has truly eased my mental load and made me feel less overwhelmed. When I got my first delivery, I was amazed at how easy it was to whip up a healthy, delicious meal. The ingredients were fresh, high quality, and the recipe was easy to complete. Best of all, my wife, Laura, absolutely loved it. I've tried eating healthy in many ways, from meal prepping to using food delivery services, but nothing compares to Hungry Root. It saved me so much time grocery shopping and meal prepping, and it helps me stick to my dietary needs. Plus, I'm wasting less food. Hungry Root is the easiest way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high-quality groceries, simple, delicious recipes, and essential supplements. It's like having someone else do all the planning and shopping so you don't even have to think about it. Right now, Hungry Root is offering Game Theory listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Yes, you heard that right. Free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/Game Theory to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/Game Theory. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent you. Okay, Bryce, our last team in the Western Conference here is the Memphis Grizzlies. I just really want to see this Memphis team again. I want to see them healthy. I want to see what Zach Edey looks like.
Yeah.
I want to see Ja Morant play basketball again. There are so many reasons why I'm excited to see Memphis to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team back-to-back 50-win seasons, and then the last year that was the injuries and all of that. And so, they played 33 guys last year. I'm just here on B-Ball Reference, just kind of looking up the numbers. 33 players for the Grizzlies last season. So it's another interesting roster, as we've been talking about for, it seems like, a few years now, like consolidation team. And so do they end up doing that? Do they just play and lean into their depth? You mentioned Zach Edey. Seems like all of these teams that we've talked about outside the Thunder have at least one rookie that's going to be part of the rotation in some capacity. I guess not the Nuggets either, but a young player that's going to be part of the rotation. And that's true for the Grizzlies as well with Edey. How do they hash out the wing room? I think is the big thing for me. Obviously Morant being back, Bane, can Jaren Jackson Jr., what does the offense look like after what he had to do last year? Pairing him with Edey, like, what does that look like defensively? But who are the wings that really step up for this team between all of Williams, obviously Jackson with the unfortunate injury, Jake LaRavia? Like, who is the guy that steps into that role and really takes off with it?
What's your expectation for this team? Like, honestly, like, I'm not totally sure what to think in terms of win losses with them, right? Like, I can tell you what Vegas thinks, but like, without even me telling you that,
what is the line?
Yeah, you give me what you think it is, and I will look it up.
46.5.
Okay, so let's go here. I'm gonna look at PointsBet real quick because that's just the one that I had up. NBA. Let's see, NBA futures. Do we have win totals? Oh my goodness. I can't find win totals over on PointsBet. Let's go to BetMGM. Keep talking about Memphis while I find this.
Yeah. So, I mean, just you look through teams here. I think there's a chance this team, like, I think if I had to bet my money somewhere, I would probably say a play-in team, like the top end of the play-in. But if you told me they snuck in, snuck's not even the right word. If they get into the top 6, I wouldn't be shocked by that. That's just assuming that Ja is able to come back and, jump right back into it from the start. Same with Desmond Bane, who missed almost half of last season. Marcus Smart only played 20 games last season. So it may take a little while for them to gel and figure stuff out just a little bit. Sam, if you look at the private chat, Andrew gave us the number.
Man, look at you, Bryce. 47.5 is the number. That was pretty slick. 46.5, you said, and it's 47.5. You nailed it.
Yeah, not bad. So if 46.5 last season, what play-in teams 49 for, I would probably take the over. I don't think I would like hit it really, really hard, but I think I would probably go over. I think this team, like I said, is either top in like the 7 seed or gets into a top 6 seed.
The Memphis Grizzlies won 56 and 51 games in 2022 and 2023.
Yep.
Those teams were great. Like those teams were so good on both ends of the court. They were capable. They had some like weird, like offensive execution things that would cause them issues from time to time. If you would look at their offensive ratings, I think that they were just like slightly above league average in that 2023 season, in part because of those like weird offensive execution things. But man, I think that this team is just being completely forgotten about in some respect. Desmond Bane is like a terrific basketball player. John Morant is obviously a fantastic offensive force who is so capable of creating offense all across the board. This team competed for the number 1 seed in the West each of those seasons. Even if we think that, hey, the West is way stronger, even if we think the West is way deeper, even if we think that there's been in some way, shape, or form diminished returns on these players for some reason, this team is still going to be a really, really good basketball team if they get any sort of luck from the injury gods.
Which hasn't been a good start to that already with the injury to Gigi, but it's still better than right. Like with Ja, like you got to keep Ja, Desmond, and Jaren Jackson Jr. healthy. If they can keep those 3 guys healthy, they can manage some of the role players going down with their depth. And so that if they get those 3, 60 plus games from those 3, I think they can be the team we're talking about here. And then it's, then what is the ceiling? Can those 3 find their chemistry and get back into it? How good is Zach Edey as a rookie in the middle for that team? And then continue to talk about it. Like, who are the wings that fill out the roster? And so I think that will be important for them to figure out.
Well, you know what we never really got last year? Like, we never got to find out what Marcus Smart looks like with this core trio,
for
right?
Sure. 20
like Marcus Smart is an awesome basketball player. Do you know how much Marcus Smart played with their core trio of Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant?
I mean, Ja only played 9 games. I don't know how much of it overlapped with what Smart played. So I'll say 137 minutes.
114 minutes. Pretty good, Bryce.
Thanks.
They won those minutes by 2.5 points. They had a 106.8 defensive rating in the 119 minutes that 4 played together. And it's super small sample, right? But the whole reason they went out and got Marcus Smart was that Zach Kleiman and the folks involved in Memphis thought that he was the perfect guy to have with that core trio, that he would be able to take on tough defensive assignments from Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, that they thought that he'd be able to be a connective tissue offensive player for as Desmond Bane continues to grow and mature as an offensive player, he'd be able to step up and continue to move forward and get better. I think that this is like, I don't think they're going to be like a juggernaut type team, but I think that they're going to be really, really good. And I think where I'm at is that Memphis makes the playoffs. Just not the play in. I think they make the playoffs. Is where I'm at.
What does them ending up in the top 4 look like to you? Like what?
Ja Morant is an all NBA player. Jaren Jackson's top 3 in defensive player of the year, and some of the shot creation growth we saw.
What has to go right beyond those guys, right? Like if they're a top 4 team, what goes right with the role play? Like who's the role players that you think are most likely to hit to let them be in that echelon of teams?
So number one, Marcus Smart plays 60 games.
Okay.
I think that's big. That's the big one. Number two, Zach Edey's ready to go.
Yep.
Like
That's the one.
Edey,
Yeah.
Edey is probably the most important one here. If Edey can eat real minutes, if he can eat 20 to 25 minutes a night at the center position, they can get by, because you can play Jaren Jackson 10 minutes a game at center. Santi Aldama is going to play minutes because Santi is a really good player coming off of an awesome Olympics. Like,
and Brandon Clark.
If Brandon Clark back, who doesn't play center, but is going to eat minutes in the front court, right? And has a great partnership with Jaren Jackson whenever Jaren is on the court. So, yeah, I think that if Edey can eat 20 to 25 minutes a night, this team is going to be really, really good. I think he can. It's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like in the playoffs. In fact, I am skeptical it will look great in the playoffs for Zach Edey. But in the regular season, we're having great rim protection, having a big physical body who's an elite level rebounder around, having a guy who's like an incredible screen setter for John Morant. Those things are all incredibly valuable. If he can do that early on, and I think there's a good chance that he can, because those are all things within his skill set, I think they're going to be quite good. Those are the two, though, to me. It's really got to be Smart and Edey. And then like Luke Kennard is still back, right? Like Luke Kennard is a very capable, like combo guardie, can play some more point than what people think, but really just like an incredible shooter. Like I said, like certainly Aldama is there and he's terrific. Brandon Clark is there. Brandon Clark, like people are excited about Brandon Clark. He looked healthy, over the summer from what I was told. So this team is pretty deep. Yes, they need like one or two wings to step up, but I think they have a number of really, really high level options here.
Yeah, no, and that's what, like, even when you go into the deeper depth, I guess, if that's even remotely correct, there's some interesting names as well. We talked about Scottie Pippen Jr. and how he looked at Summer League. We've, mentioned Jake LaRavia. We just had Vincent Williams Jr. on our, top 10 value contracts in the league.
Yeah, that's the other guy. Like, we haven't even talked about Vince Williams. Vince is really good.
Yeah, Gigi will be back at some point. They kind of took the two, Jay Huff from Summer League is on a two-way with this team. Not to mention, your guy, Cam Smith. I'm not saying all these guys are going to play into it. I'm just saying if you really need depth as role players at some points throughout the season, you have some interesting names. Even as a rookie, Cam Spencer is already 24 years old. Scottie Pippen Jr., 24 years old. Jake LaRavia, 23. So like they got guys that are a little older that can fill those depth role spots when they come available throughout the season.
Yeah, look, like I'm glad you brought up Vince Williams, because having now multiple options to take on like really tough assignments.
Yeah.
Desmond Bane like doesn't have to do that anymore.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's going to make him an even better offensive player in all likelihood. So yeah, I think this team's going to be really good and I'm excited to watch them. Another team that is expected to be really good, but we just really need to see what this team looks like. Let's go to the East. Philadelphia 76ers. Truly? What do you expect from them early on? I know I'll watch their first 10 games.
Yeah, I think it could be. Would you be shocked if they started out 5-5 to start the season or something like that?
Not at all. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm trying to see. Do we have their schedule yet?
I mean, we do. I have no idea. Like, not that. Listen, maybe they have the easiest schedule in the NBA through the first 10, and they're going to go 10-0. I was just saying from a pure like chemistry, figuring out how to play together standpoint.
So they have early on Milwaukee, Toronto, Indiana, Detroit, Memphis, Phoenix, Clippers, Lakers, Hornets, and then Knicks and Cavs and Orlando.
Yeah.
That's a group of teams that can make your life hard. By and large.
So there's something like, I don't think the regular season matters a ton to them. Obviously you don't want to lose too many games and, end up as the 6 or, the play-in or something. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 500 basketball for a little while as they figure things out and those big three figure out kind of who gets shots wins and the rotation and then you're adding in a whole bunch of new role players, not to mention Joel Embiid just came off a summer playing in the Olympics. And so, like, how does he even start the season? How fresh is he? How ready to go is he? How do they need to slow play it moving him into the year? And then you're, like I say, Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, and then whoever of Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson. I know Lowry was there last year, but just figuring out those rotations. I'm excited about this team. I wouldn't be shocked if people are overreacting early in the year because they're not, dominating and winning a ton of games.
So a couple different options that they could go with, like in terms of the starting five, right?
Sure.
What I'm assuming they will do is Maxey, George, Embiid with probably Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre, right?
Agreed. Yes.
You could also go Kyle Lowry next to Tyrese Maxey and then go Paul George, Caleb Martin, Joel Embiid. You could go really, those are the two, I think, probably. Like, I don't think they're going to start like Yabusele, right? Like they'll let that roll. My guess is that they probably just start Kelly and Caleb and ask those guys to take on tougher defensive assignments. Maybe Paul will take on some at times because he's still capable of dealing with that. But I would think that they'll probably try to integrate PG pretty slowly and say, hey, like, if you want to go get some shots, go get some shots. But also, we're going to try and run some things for you. Like Nick Nurse is going to try and get him some open threes, I would guess, and get him some second side options with the ball in his hands. Honestly, probably have him like bring the ball up the court occasionally. I would imagine, though, that like Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, more so than anything, share the kind of combo of being like the primary playmaker, because with Joel's going to take up so much offensive usage anyway that you can probably do that.
What's the 8 deep? So let's say you start Embiid, George, Maxey, Martin, Oubre. Drummond plays.
Yep. Drummond is next. I'm guessing Lowry is your 7th man.
So then
one of Lowry or Reggie Jackson, let's say, right? Like both, one of those guys could, my guess is one of those guys plays, right? If we're going 8 deep, if we're going 9 deep, they might both play.
So one of those, and then Gordon as the other one.
I was going to guess Gordon, or I was going to guess more Yabusele.
Okay.
Honestly, just because you have a lot of guards already there,
so
right?
That's why I asked this, is because between Gordon, Jackson, Lowry, you can't play them all together. Obviously, it kind of make, like Jared McCain, the rookie, probably is out.
Yeah. Like we both really like Jared. But,
yeah.
It's probably a rookie, and Nick Nurse, not super enthused typically with rookies. So like,
this is where Yabusele stands out on this roster.
Yeah.
And even
he's
like
something totally different than what they have.
Even Kenyon Martin to an extent, just because of the position aspect of it. Yeah.
Like KJ Martin, like might play a decent amount of time. Like by that, I mean, like he might play 1,000 minutes, and maybe they try to move him at some point in the season because they gave him that $8 million contract, but it wouldn't stun me if maybe they just like try out a lot of different shit. That's the other thing too. Like another reason I'm excited to watch this team, I think they're probably going to try out a lot of different shit early on, where it's like, okay, let's see what a Reggie Jackson, Tyrese Maxey combo looks like. Let's see what a Yabu and Joel Embiid combo looks like. Let's see what Paul George at the 4 looks like. Let's see what, they're going to do so many different interesting things early on that I just really want to watch it and find out what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah, let's get a Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon with Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid lineup. That sounds like one we should try.
Okay, let's not do that, baby. But like, if you told me that they went with some weird, like, Maxey with, like, if Paul George like sits a game, if they go Maxey with like Caleb Martin, Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, Yabusele lineup or something like wild like that off the bench, and just have Maxey like kind of run the bench unit, that wouldn't blow my mind. That's the other thing that's really exciting about this too.
Yeah.
One
yeah.
of Paul George or Tyrese Maxey now gets to run the bench unit.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
And that's going to be really valuable for them. Having one of those two guys slide down to the bench unit and be able to carry the offensive load for that group. Additionally, having in games where Joel misses, because Joel will miss games, having both of those guys around to be able to carry the offensive load is going to be helpful for them.
And based off kind of what we talked about, maybe Paul George makes more sense to run that second unit. Like Maxey and Embiid already have the chemistry from last year. We talked about the heavy guard lineup in the second unit. All those guys are older, but between Jackson, Lowry, and Gordon. So maybe staggering PG into the second unit, playing with those guards and Drummond and Yabusele, maybe that's the easy way to kind of, figure that out, those rotations and balance everything out with them.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I'm really excited to watch it. Like, I think that they're going to be quite good. The other thing, like, and look, we talked about this when we did the 24 under 24 list. I really want to see what Tyrese Maxey looks like. I think there's a chance Tyrese Maxey is just an absolute, like, real dude. And if he's that, things really change. If he is a legitimate, like, top 15 player in the league, and I think there is a non-zero chance of that, this like completely changes the equation for them if Joel's healthy, because it would allow them to get through the season making the top 6 if you play Joel like fewer and fewer and fewer minutes in games.
Yeah. And then ultimately for this team, right, it's going to be the playoffs. And that's what they have to build all year through, is to have those answers come playoff time and to just build off that. We've rattled off the stats, but Maxey's been unbelievable in the playoffs. And so I hope we get bigger and bigger stages for him to show that.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrese Maxey, we've talked enough about his playoff numbers at this point, but look, he was an all-star last season. I would expect he's an all-star again this season. Figuring out, Maxey's the last thing they have to worry about. The thing they have to worry about is, okay, where do we replace the, 1,000 minutes that DeAnthony Melton played, the 1,500 minutes that Nick Batum played, the, I'm assuming that like the 2,300 from Tobias is just like what they're hoping Paul George plays, right? The 900 minutes that Beverly played, like figuring out answers to that number, the 800 minutes that Buddy Hield played.
Yeah.
Who eats all of those? That's a lot of minutes to eat up. Yeah. And they signed a lot of guys, so you would expect them to eat them up, but you have to figure out who's going to do that at the end of the day. And they just have a lot of guys that are questionable in some way.
Yeah, and guys that are a little bit older, right? All those guards we mentioned, 34, 36, 38, Drummond's 31, Paul George 34. We all know Embiid. And so it's not necessarily a bunch of young guys that you brought in. And so that stuff could start to catch up a little bit. That is a lot of minutes to replace as you go through all of those.
Okay. Last team here. We're bringing on specialist here, bringing on Andrew Claudio to talk about the New York Knicks. Andrew, what's going on, buddy? And Andrew's devices are not connected, so we're gonna have to figure out what's going on there. You and I will talk about the Knicks to start. Potentially, Andrew might be back here in a second. Okay, and we're back.
Yeah, my webcam wasn't working, but we're all up and running. Let's do it.
Okay, Andrew, what are the Knicks resident here on the Game Theory podcast? What are you most excited about with the New York Knicks? And I assume it's not Landry Shamet.
No, it is not. Nor is it Marcus Morris, who was signed to an Exhibit 9 deal today with the Knicks. So, well, this now being my place of neutrality, I need to. I mean, you just had some Sixers thoughts up there. I need to make sure that I express my bona fides here, and so my honest, unbiased thoughts. First, I'll just say of the Sixers and what they did is that they're going to lose again because they're losers in Philadelphia, and the Knicks will, of course, be better than them because that's how I see things going. All kidding aside, my most exciting thing about the Knicks is that this is the most talent that I think they've ever had. It's just they're loaded, guys. The depth is there. The like campaign was getting playoff minutes and getting buckets against the Knicks in the first round this year. And he's their 11th man at the moment. From talking to intelligent people that cover the draft like yourselves, Tyler Kolek is NBA ready now, and he's not in the starting rotation and the in the rotation to start the season. So
Tyler Kolek's going to spend a lot of time in Westchester this year.
Right. And it's fine because he could, they have a legitimate minor leagues. And I think, look, we joke about Landry Shamet and Marcus Morris and the 11th, 12th, 13th guys. But let me tell you, the 11th, 12th, 13th guys got run last season with the injuries that piled up, with Anunoby going down and Mitch Robinson going down and Julius Randle going down. And in the playoffs, when you're out of bodies, they just didn't have any dependable ones to go to. I like that there's a focus on depth and people that Tibbs could potentially trust. So look, I think they have the best top 8 potentially, if you're factoring in what the Thunder are, the best top 8 or 9 in the NBA. It's a conversation. And you tell me, I took the over on 53.5. Am I being too much of a homer? Am I being too delusional as a Knicks fan?
No.
Okay.
I think 53.5 is probably about right. But look, the over under podcast is coming potentially this week. So I don't want to share too much, but the Knicks will be quite highly thought of on that show, at least by me. Look, they have 2 of the 4 best wing defenders, 2 of the 5 best wing defenders in the league. If you could throw OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges in a conversation with Herb Jones, with Jade McDaniels, with, any number of different players. I'm sorry if I didn't name your favorite team's player, but like having both of those guys now to take on tough assignments night in, night out, both of them are flexible in who they can play against. OG, I think, is better sizing up against bigger, wings and even forward center types. Mikal's better sizing down and dealing with guards and perimeter players and being able to bother those guys, right? So that's a huge factor for the Knicks moving forward. I'm excited to see, I mean this genuinely, and I think Knicks fans are still trying to figure out what this is going to look like. I'm so excited to see what they do with Julius Randle. I don't know what that looks like in all. Do they start just Dante and Jalen Brunson and then have Mikal and OG Anunoby and then start Julius Randle? Or do they start Mitchell Robinson with, 2 of those wings in OG and Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson, and then they start Randle with the true big? That's kind of my guess, right? You go Robinson, Randle, the 2 wings in Anunoby and Bridges and Brunson. That feels like the most likely starting 5 to me, as long as Mitchell Robinson is healthy. But then they have Dante and they have Josh Hart. These 2 guys are freaking awesome. And Deuce McBride has been really valuable for them. Figuring out what their lineups look like on any given night is really interesting to me. And, we opened this podcast talking about Oklahoma City, right? And having different answers for different problems that teams are going to present to you. Honestly, I kind of think the Knicks might be the team outside of Boston in the Eastern Conference that has the most answers to the tests that will be provided to them. Is that crazy?
Not at all. And the big question, I think, amongst Knicks fans right now, with 4 years of Tom Thibodeau under our belt, is the emphasis on rim protection has always been a reason why he never went small. And it's why Obi Toppin never saw minutes at the 5 or next to Randall at the 5. And, we would see Jericho Sims getting starting minutes if there was an injury to Mitch or Hartenstein was the starter and you needed a backup rather than pivot to smaller lineups. Then last year, when they had some depth issues, we saw him starting 3 guards. And if Josh Hart is considered a forward now, then great. Yeah. He's technically your power forward, but they were starting lineups with Hartenstein and Josh Hart and DiVincenzo and Deuce McBride next to Brunson, which is unbelievably small.
Oh,
And it
there
was
were moments where OG was like playing the 5.
Yeah, so that's the thing I think a lot of Knicks fans are hoping is that, yes, it's Randall at the 5 would technically be what people look at, but if OG's guarding your other team's center, and you could just switch everything, and then Randall turns into your Hartenstein hub that you run the offense through him, but now with 4 shooters everywhere. Or if you need a little more rebounding, you put Josh Hart in. Or as you mentioned about Deuce McBride, I mean, the guy turned himself into a bona fide lethal shooter throughout the regular season and
Yeah.
the playoffs. They just have so many options to your point. And I think a lot of Knicks fans, if you're asking for excitement, are will they go small? Can they go small? And how often will we see it?
Bryce, what are you excited about with the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see the center position and how it plays out. I make jokes about this a little bit. I honestly think I would have picked or would pick the Knicks to win the regular season if it wasn't for the center position. It makes me nervous with Mitch Robb, and I just don't think I trust yet that Julius is going to get minutes at the 5 or OG as in the scenario, whatever that combination is. But I thought maybe there's a chance that they just, because we know Tom Thibodeau is going to go try to win every regular season game. I thought maybe the Celtics would get off to a slow start with those 3 guys playing in the Olympics and KP not playing until after the first of the year. And so I was like, man, maybe this would be my hot take as the Knicks win the regular season. I just can't get there with the center spot. But I mean, if Brunson replicates and then you have those 2 wings, if Mitch Robb is healthy, it answers a lot of this stuff, right? It's just like, how much can you trust that, Andrew?
Well, can I give you a bit of a hot take? You just said something that I want to piggyback. You said if Brunson replicates. What if I told you I hope he doesn't? I hope he doesn't have to carry the team
okay.
for 4 months because they're so injury riddled. And look, what he did for the last 3.5 months of the season was extraordinary. And for as many jokes as you want to make about like the captain, Jalen Brunson, the first captain since Lance Thomas in New York, he's won our hearts between taking the extension that he did and then the changing of the guard and the vibes that have now come with him and the Villanova triumph, well, whatever you want, quartet that now exists in New York. I looked into going and get my master's at Villanova this summer, which that's how ingrained into like that culture they have created here. We all are. I would love for this to be like Randall averages 7 assists and they destroy teams every night because they have an answer for everything. Like you said, I hear you about the center depth position, especially with Mitchell Robinson. And it's why I'll just add, and you guys can take it from here. They do have a trade in them. I don't know what the trade is, but it's for a backup center if they need to, or a starting center.
Totally.
If they need to. Like the Zubac extension actually took him out of the running, which is I was like, that was when I was paying attention to. But
I don't think they'll go that big. Like I don't think they'll go that expensive, I guess, at the center position. Do you?
But if Mitch is hurt, is what I'm saying. Like that's the type of backup center I'm talking about. I actually think Precious Achiuwa can be like a backup center that plays 25 minutes when they need him because they're playing Embiid or Jokic or Giannis or one of the bigger players in the league. Or if you need to go small and switch everything, you go to that death lineup that I just mentioned. If Mitch goes down, then they'll need the name that keeps being brought up is Walker Kessler, which I have no idea what Danny Ainge wants. Rumor has it for a backup center that that played at Summer League and that he's not really high on. He wants the Knicks first round picks for that they have left. He wants the Statue of Liberty. He wants a name like a whole street named after him in next to Broadway, and who knows if that price ever comes down.
Like, do we really think Danny Ainge is going to like give the Knicks like a young center? Like,
Not give, but if the Knicks come correct with, so let me ask you: is Deuce McBride like a backup at this point? Deuce McBride, who's on a very cheap contract, a protected pick even. Is that good for a center that they're currently not high on?
I would, if I was Utah, I would do Deuce in a first. I wouldn't do that if I was the Knicks. I think Deuce is really good.
But if they're desperate, Deuce is their 8th man right now. Like that's the thing. You have
and you know what?
If they're desperate for a center,
you have Kolek too. I mean, here's the one. Like, could you do Kolek in a first? And like, I guess that my guess is that Utah probably isn't as interested in that, if only because Utah had two different chances to take Tyler Kolek in the 2024 NBA draft at 29 and 32 and didn't do it. Right. But yeah, honestly, the Deuce one's interesting. That's like actually a pretty reasonable, fair offer. The more I think about it.
Claudio, what would it take? What would you trade for Isaiah Stewart?
Ooh, what's his So here's the part that
he's flat 15 for like for 3 years, I believe,
with a team option, I believe, on the last year, right?
So they'd need to have more money going out, I believe, right, in order to avoid being hard capped at the first.
Yeah, so it's 3+1 club option on the fourth.
Yeah, you could do Precious and Deuce, I think, at a certain point in the year. Like after Precious is tradable, you could do that.
If it's after Precious is tradable, if that's what it takes,
and get and send the Pistons pick back to them.
Oh, so they have control of well.
Yeah,
not that we're counting on that pick ever converting, but yes, I guess if you I would hesitate on Deuce, but I understand the concept of it being like that. He's the prize in the trade.
I just know that like Stu is a guy for Pistons fans. It's like, okay, Jalen Duren, and then they brought in Paul Reed. So what does that mean for Isaiah Stewart? And then Pistons fans love trying to get that protected pick, not even because of the pick, but it just like opens up opportunities or whatever. And it's just an annoying thing to always have to keep mindful of. So that was another name. I just wonder.
He's on the list. Clint Capella is a name that's come up in New York.
That's a buyout name though. That's not they can't make the money work there.
So but that's like where we're looking.
Did Goga sign early enough? Did Goga sign early enough that he
signed the day of free agency? So
yeah.
Yes,
so, it would be
he would be eligible.
Yeah. The extensions are the one. So it would just be later in the year. And he's low money, like 6'5".
I gotta be honest,
he's 9. And then
it
decreases. Okay.
He was the name I was staring at when I knew Hartenstein was going to OKC. It's like, all right, go get Goga. And you look at all the impact metrics, they love him. And then the center, the backup and the regular center market it was so inflated that the Knicks got priced out.
Just to like shift off not to shift off of it, but to like ask the question in a different way. Is there a chance we're thinking about the center position too much with them? Like they have a lot of options here already. Like they have Mitch, who, for as long as he stays healthy is the guy, right? They have Julius Randle, who can do whatever. You have the combination of OG Anunoby and Randle together, which I think they can certainly get by with using. You have Precious Achiuwa, who can eat minutes for sure. You have Jericho Sims, who Tibbs seems to like. You have Ariel Hookporty, who I certainly like and think could be like a perfect Tibbs big. Probably not this year, but like maybe, in a year or two with development. I think where I'm at on this is I actually think we're overthinking the big problem with New York. I look at their center position and I'm like, and look, like for now, right? For as long as Mitch is healthy, these are future problems to solve. These are not a problem. This is not a problem you have to solve right now. This is something that you can look at if disaster was to happen and Mitch is out for a month, which honestly, like you might be able to count on, but it sucks. Like I want Mitchell Robinson to stay healthy, but this is what he does miss time. He misses 4 to 6 weeks. It seems like every year. I wonder if we're focusing too much on that at the expense of like, holy shit, Dante DiVincenzo right now is like 16-1 to win 6th man of the year and was fucking unbelievable last year as a starter. And Josh Hart is their 7th man and is unbelievable. And like, like you said, Deuce is amazing. And they have the ability to solve every problem that teams present in front of them. Outside of maybe they could use like a secondary offensive creator that isn't just like putting the ball in his left hand and like putting his shoulder down and driving to the rim, because that's both what Jalen does and Julius does, right? Like you might want a little bit of versatility that way, but they have so many fucking problems that they can solve, man. Like
it's a compliment. I was just gonna say it's a compliment to the Knicks though. Like I think it speaks to the tier and the echelon that we have them in and how good we think they can be. So
What
Yeah.
was my answer to your question about how excited I am, Bryce? It's
Extremely.
the depth. It's the extreme
Yeah.
depth that they have. I'm extremely excited for the fact that I like Josh Hart, the playoff hero that was like I could count like how many minutes he missed in the playoffs on
Yeah.
my two hands. Like he was a playoff hero, as I said, and he is now your seventh man. And Dante broke the Knicks single season 3-point shooting record, and he's now coming off the bench. I think the only thought I have with the center position is it's a Thibodeau thing. He has put an emphasis on the center position. He showed a lot of flexibility last year. I don't want to say growth. I think it's just he schemes based off his personnel, but his personnel became very limited, and then he pivoted to places I never thought he'd pivot because he never has in the past. So I'm hoping his personnel dictates that he goes small and he tests out Anunoby at the 5 or Randall at the 5 with more shooting on the floor. So I'm excited to see it. I think this is a chance to be one of the more exciting Knicks seasons that has ever existed.
Andrew, including the playoffs, who do you think played more minutes last season? Precious Achiuwa or OG Anunoby?
Oh, Precious Achiuwa.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a little bit closer when you include playoffs. It was like within like 150 minutes. But Precious played more minutes than Anunoby last year because Anunoby got hurt.
And Precious was playing like 40 minutes a game. They started Precious at
that
the
was a little
4
bit
for like
wild.
3 months. Believe me, we got it up close. We do at Knicks Film School, we do a KFS at MSG night where we take a bunch of our patrons from Patreon to a game and like watch a game in a suite. I don't know if you guys remember the Sunday night ABC game last year between the Knicks and Sixers where Embiid didn't play, Maxey didn't play, and the final score was 79-73. And it was like the worst display of offense I saw all year. And it was the beginning of Nick Nurse just saying, like, I'm just going to put everybody in the paint. And you have Josh Hart over there and Hartenstein over there and Precious over there. If they want to hit threes, fine. And that was the last time we saw Tibbs start Precious Achiuwa at the 5. He was like trying to win the offensive rebound battle every night. And he did. The offensive rebound percentage was insane. But that's the moment he was like, oh, I scored 73 points tonight. Like, I'm going to need to generate more offense. And then we got the Deuce starting lineup, which was great.
The Knicks last season had 1,900 minutes of Taj Gibson, Precious Achiuwa, Jericho Sims.
The Taj Gibson
and won
hilarious. Yeah.
And won 50 games doing that. They are better this year.
Can I add one more thing to piggyback onto that? Because what you didn't count in there were the Pistons minutes. No disrespect, Bryce, but they did make a trade with the Pistons, and Bogey and Alec Burks were borderline unplayable, but you had to play them. And every night it was a battle of like, can we survive the Pistons minutes?
Now inconsequential trade ever, because then the Pistons just traded Quentin Grimes for Tim Hardaway Jr. That was like the most exciting trade at the deadline, and it did not matter for either team.
You got a 50 burger from Malachi Flynn out of that trade. I don't want to hear about inconsequential.
Malachi Flynn's my guy, man. Don't sleep on Malachi Flynn. He's down there with the Spurs. I was going to try to sneak him in earlier when we were talking about the Spurs too.
Once a Knick, always a Knick. All the Pistons minutes are now Mikal Bridges minutes, which also has me excited.
Upgrade. Yeah. That's a little
okay. So the Knicks are at 53.5 wins. You said,
yeah,
and you said over.
I took the over. I think this is.
Bryce?
I think that there's a glut in the top of the East, but I think that anywhere from 54 to 57 is the number.
Over.
Yeah, I also agree over, and I think it's closer to the 57 in the regular season. To be honest with you, like, look, I'm fascinated to see how Boston just like handles its minutes with its stars this season. Like, I think there's a chance that, they try and get some rest here and there, and maybe they're not as serious about the regular season as what they have to be. But I'll tell you this, man, like, if I am Boston, I want home court advantage over the Knicks. I do not want to have to go to MSG with the way that this fan base is engaged right now and have to deal with that in a playoff series. I truly just don't. I think look, maybe the 1 seed, maybe the 2 seed, who knows? Like, I think it's going to be close with Boston because Boston's a better team than New York. Like, I absolutely think that, but I just wonder how seriously Boston handles the regular season. I think those are the two teams in the East, and then Milwaukee, Philly, and then, probably Orlando, Cleveland, I would say, or Orlando, Cleveland, Indiana, I think would
Indiana,
be the next
yeah.
three for me. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Indiana deserves to be included there, and Indiana, I think, could easily finish in the top three if things like really went nuts. So, okay, folks, it is time.
Let's go.
I'm excited.
It is time for Andrew to participate in his first trivia time, folks. Bryce, you have the podcast.
Sam and Andrew, we are looking for the top 10 players from the 23-24 regular season who played 60 plus games, had at least a 25% usage, and had the lowest percentage of teams turnovers, not turnovers per game, percentage of their team's turnovers. So I'll repeat, 60 plus games, at least 25% usage, and the lowest percentage of their team's turnovers. We're looking for the top 10 in lowest percentage.
Okay, and this does not include, this is not like turnover rate. This is
Percentage of teams'
of their
turnovers.
team's turnovers.
So if the whatever Lake and Bronx, that's where I'm at, averaged 20 turnovers a game, and I had 10 of them, that's a 50% turnover rate.
Okay.
Or turnover
Andrew.
percentage, turnover percentage.
Yeah, you get to go first here.
Great. We'll start with Maxey.
Tyrese Maxey, great call, Andrew. That is number 2 on this list. Tyrese Maxey averaged 19% of his team's turnovers, or had 19%.
Okay, my answer is Fred VanVleet.
Fred VanVleet must not have had the usage, Sam.
Oh, that is catastrophic for me.
That's stunning.
Let me look this up. Let's change it to 20. Where is Fred at? I'll have to look this up while we continue to go. But he is not on my list.
My next guess will be Tyrese Halliburton.
Fuck. Tyrese Halliburton. Oh, he didn't play the games.
Oh,
Did he?
you're right.
Oh,
No,
Okay.
he did. He played 60.
Yeah, he played 60 plus games. Yeah, he did because he made all NBA.
He is not on this list.
Oh.
He had to have had the usage percentage. So where is NBA.com leading me astray?
Okay, so my next guess here is going to be Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards is not in the top 10.
Wow.
Anthony Edwards is 25th on this list
Yikes.
at 29.6%
of his team's turnovers.
Yes.
Man, I thought Ant was below 3 last year per game. That's kind of
that's
like
where
yeah. Think through things.
Okay, so NBA.com has Tyrese Halliburton's usage percentage at 23.9.
Wow. Okay.
So, and who was the other one? Fred VanVleet. Let's look at his. Fred VanVleet was at 19.4 according to NBA.com.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go. So we have Tyrese Maxey. Andrew chose him. Sam got somebody on the board. Anthony. For the record, there's I mentioned this early in the pod. 37 names on this list.
Yeah. But we're looking at top 10. So
just the top 10. Yep.
Yeah. Andrew's up 1-0.
The usage is what's throwing me off now. If Hallie had a 23,
don't think about it too much. The other names, like the names you guys are gonna say, are the names on this list. Like I think with Hallie, you got an outlier. With Fred, you got a little bit of an outlier. Like don't overthink that aspect of it.
SGA
is 15th on this list. Really good guess. SGA is at 27.2. 10th place is 24.9. So close. Steph is not in the top 10. He is obviously on this list. Steph is 20th at 28% of his team's turnovers.
Yikes. Okay.
There's no way. So I'm trying to think if it's. I'm gonna throw Josh Hart out there, just a wild card.
Oh, no way he had the usage.
He
right?
didn't have the usage.
He played a lot the second half of the year. I didn't know if he had the points and assists or the shot attempts and assists, I should say.
Let me look at.
You're right. His usage is probably way too low.
Josh. Yeah, it's really low.
Okay. I'm going to say Donovan Mitchell.
Donovan Mitchell, not in the top 10. Donovan Mitchell, not on the list.
Darius Garland.
Oh, fuck.
Probably didn't play a lot. Wait, that's right. Didn't play.
I bet Garland didn't have the games, did he?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot he missed.
Neither did Mitchell. Mitchell was at 55. Garland was at 57.
Fuck, I thought Mitchell got to 60.
Okay,
so I'm up. My next guess is Jokic.
Nikola Jokic, not on this list in the top 10. He is 33rd at 34.3%. Remember, it's percent of your team's turnovers. So
bonkers right now.
I will guess.
Like, these are big name dudes. Like, I just want to be clear that it's not like it's a list of just random people.
James.
LeBron James, right ahead of Jokic at number 32. We're doing pretty good with the bottom 10. I bet you could guess the person with the highest percentage.
Working on it.
Probably Russ, I would guess, right?
I would guess Luka.
Luka's 37.
Oh yeah. Kyrie is actually my next guess.
Kyrie Irving, not in the top 10.
Oh, he didn't play 50. He didn't play 60, did he?
Yeah, Kyrie not on this list.
I know he was close, but
Bam Adebayo.
That's an interesting name.
That's a really interesting
thinking
guess.
Low turnovers, like there's a center.
I'm really just like, I have a name.
Bam is not on this list.
On the list.
Let's look at Kyrie. Kyrie only played 58 games, just barely missed.
Man, I was close. But what was he? He didn't turn it over a ton. So.
Give me 1 second. Kyrie Irving, 21.7 would have put him like 7th. So
okay, so I missed by 2 games. That makes me feel better. Okay,
Bam. Real quick, Bam, 24.7% usage.
Wow.
So you were right there. He would not have been in the top 10, but top 15.
Okay.
Man.
Kawhi.
There we go, Sam. Kawhi is
1-1.
Third on this list at 19.4% of his team's turnovers.
Okay.
Paul George.
Let's go 2 in a row.
Good one.
Paul George is 9th on this list at 23.1% of his team's turnovers.
Kevin Durant.
Good guess. Kevin Durant is not in the top 10. Kevin Durant, we're getting so much better here, guys, is 18th, 27.9%.
Let's keep going with the theme of Sam names a team and I name a co-star. I'll go Devin Booker.
Let's go.
That was my next one. Fuck.
Devin Booker is 10th on this list at 24.9. Andrew's at 3. Sam is at 1. We have players 2, 3, 9, and 10 of the list.
Okay. Okay.
I will give you both a hint. There are some players that played on bad to mediocre teams on this list.
These are not mediocre or mediocre situations.
I was never going to say that word again, and then I was already halfway through, and I couldn't stop myself.
Yeah, trying to think of like low turnover guys now, or even just like primary-ish players. DeJounte Murray.
DeJounte Murray is an interesting name. He is 13th, Sam. That is a good guess, but doesn't get a point. 25.9% of his team's turnovers.
Senjun.
He is on this list, but not in the top 10. Alperen Sengun was 30th on this list.
Okay.
The bottom of this list is fascinating names.
I have a hilarious name.
I can't wait.
Now you're saying like bad teams. Now I'm thinking, is our good friend from LSU, Cameron Thomas, on this list?
Cam Thomas was
No
the name
way.
that I did not think was going to be on this list that absolutely ended up on this list at number 8 with 22.5% of his team. He doesn't turn it over that much.
No, seriously, they're all like bad shots. His turnovers are like ridiculously terrible shots.
Can't turn it over if you're shooting it at the rim. And
That's it.
here's the thing, the NBA, the way they do, like so many, like the ball gets dug at and they count that as a missed shot, not a turnover. So anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. 3-2.
You said there's some bad names on here, or
well,
bad
that-
teams on here, or is
that
that the
was
only real bad
that
one?
was one of them. That was the only real bad one. I'll give you guys another hint for both of you because they're players who change teams mid-season are on this top 10.
Emmanuel Quickly.
Emmanuel Quickly is not on this
That's
list.
an interesting guess, though.
Emmanuel Quickly. Wait, wrong list. There are 2 names on this list for players who switch teams during the season.
Wow.
Is Kobe White on this list?
Kobe White is not on this list.
Pascal Siakam.
Say that again.
Siakam.
Siakam is on this
Damn.
list. Good guess, Andrew. After the hint,
You listen to the instructions. I'm still just like kind of,
Quickly was at
I'm
20
vibing here.
Quickly was at 23.1. Well, this was just with Toronto, so I'd have to look it up differently.
What was Kobe White?
I'm getting there now.
And where was Siakam on the list?
Oh, good call. Siakam was 6th. So we have number 2, number 3, number 6, 8, 9, and 10. We are looking for 1, 4, 5, and 7. Kobe White, 22.4%. Usage, 23.4. He would have been in the top 10. Not a bad guess, Sam.
So his usage was just
Just-
off by 1.6.
Yeah, just a touch.
I've had a
low.
couple of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been in the ballpark. One of these,
Oh, I might have one.
I think you guys will
Did he
kick yourself.
play?
Will kick
Did
yourself.
he
for not
play
getting-
60? Is my question.
It's 4-2, by the way.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to remember in my brain if this guy played 60 games or not before I like guess and get it wrong.
I hope you guys tie because I have a fun.
My guess is Lowry Markkinen.
Lowry is not on this list.
Man.
Did he play Did he not play 60?
I will look up as
He had to have the usage, and he like never turns it over.
as we get our answer from Andrew. Lowry played 55 games.
Fuck.
13. Yeah, he would have been first on the list in terms of
Yeah,
percentage of the
like
team's
that's
turnover. Yeah.
That's why it was like I couldn't. I knew it was like right around there on the games.
So you said there's 2 guys that change teams?
Yeah.
I don't think RJ had enough games. So I don't, because he missed time because of his brother. So I'm not going to say RJ Barrett. But I'm thinking out loud.
Okay. Do you?
I am. Thank you. Anthony Davis.
How did you pull that one? Great call.
I'm thinking low turnover.
That's
is
a good
what I'm
name.
doing. Yeah.
Anthony Davis, 7th on this list at 21.2. So now we need number 1, number 4, and number 5. Andrew can win with one more. So Sam, you need to go 3 for 3 here.
3 for 3.
Yep.
Okay. Trying to think through guys that switched teams. Oh, there's no fucking way. Guys that switch teams. If you're making me say guys that switch teams midseason, I'm guessing Terry Rozier.
Terry Rozier is number 5. Yeah, I almost told you that he actually went with both hints. Terry Rozier, let me come across the 20.6% of his team's turn. I assume that he got the usage from the time with the Hornets and then just.
Oh, he was crazy. Yeah, like he was on the ball the whole time when he was with the Hornets.
Yeah.
So
barely made the games.
LaMelo like missed a bunch of those
Yep.
games after the first like little bit because he very rarely played with LaMelo, if I remember correctly, last season.
2 names left. Number 1 and number 4.
Number 1 is what's throwing me off, that we haven't said the
Yeah,
number 1 guy yet.
I think you guys will kick yourselves if when the name is yeah, like this guy
Sabonis.
not in the top 10. Domantas Sabonis
Low
not on
usage,
the
right?
list. Yeah, probably doesn't have the shot as him.
To keep with the theme of going with guys on the team, piggybacking off of Andrew, I'm gonna actually. So the obvious one would be like to say De'Aaron, but I'm actually gonna say the new teammate, and I'm going to say DeMar.
Number 1, DeMar DeRozan. Finally. 18.9% of his team's turnovers.
I have
All
to
right,
get
so we
this
got a
for the
game.
win. Okay.
We got a game.
We have number 4. I'll let it go before I give a hint.
Need the number 4 on this list. And if DeMar was the kick yourself answer, that means this would need to be a pretty great pull, is what I gather.
It is a extremely talented basketball player, but I'm not shocked we haven't yet guessed him.
I'm like going through the standings in my head right now. All right, I'll just say a name and say
5, 4.
Jamal Murray.
Jamal
That's very
Murray.
wrong. Yeah.
Jamal Murray is not on this list. I will let you know why in just a second.
Oh, is that games played? No, he played most of the season, right?
20. Yeah, what? No, 59 games played.
Oh, man.
So definitely had the usage, turnover percentage. He would have been like 12th or 13th on the list.
Okay.
Really good guess. Really good
By
guess.
One game. Dang it.
Yeah, really good guess.
Okay. I've got a couple of names in my head. I'm trying to decide which one I think is best. I'm going, man. Yeah, that guy didn't play enough games. I know that. I will go Triple J.
That's a really good guess. 12th, though, Sam.
Ooh.
12th, 25.6% of his team's turnovers.
Franz
Wagner is 4th, and
Wasn't real high
Andrew
on my list.
gets the victory.
Yeah, you were always gonna, because I had Zion next. I think I was gonna say Tatum.
So Zion was 31st. Tatum would have been, I just saw Tatum, 26th.
Yeah.
We did not guess Colin Sexton, who was 11th, Jalen Brunson, who was 14th, Brandon Ingram, 16, Jaylen Brown, 19, Jordan Poole, Jalen Green are on this list, Paolo Banchero, Kyle Kuzma, Cade Cunningham.
Jordan Poole. That's a wild one.
Here was going to be the tiebreaker. Yes, and whoever's closest wins. The percentage of his team turnovers for last on this list, Luka Doncic.
50.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 42.
43%.
Oh, you would have right on the money,
yeah.
Sam.
Giannis was second to last, then Victor, and unfortunately, Scoot Henderson was 4th to last.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm not shocked.
That was a good one.
I actually am shocked Brunson's 14th. I thought how many turnovers, or just how much he had the ball the second half of the year would have meant he that's why I didn't even think to go to him.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Franz is an interesting one. That's a good one. Yeah, I like that. That's a good.
For what
that's a
it's
good one.
worth, Franz was exactly 25% usage, as was Pascal Siakam. Like those guys were just barely there. So recap: DeMar, Maxey, Kawhi, Franz, Rozier, top 5. Pascal, AD, Cam Thomas, Paul George, and Devin Booker round out the top 10.
Oh, what a shame. What an absolute shame. Yeah, Sexton's one that like I thought about, but I don't know. Like I guess he is kind of in that Cam Thomas-y mold, but he's kind of moved beyond that. He passes a little bit more now. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay. Andrew, tell the people all about Knicks Film School. Tell the people where they can find your stuff.
You can find Knicks Film School anywhere podcasts are available. We're ramping up for things as closer we get to Media Day. We have a very fun interview planned for next Sunday/Monday morning, so stay tuned for that. But I'm also here on behalf of Game Theory, and I would like to promote and push. Follow us on socials. There are plenty of places that you can find Game Theory and all the content that we're about to start pushing out to all of you. So on TikTok, Game Theory Sam Vecenie. On Instagram, Game Theory Sam Vecenie. On Twitter, or X, it's Twitter.
Twitter.
Mama named it Twitter. I'm gonna call it Twitter. On Twitter, Game Theory Sam V will be posting clips and show highlights and announcements and graphics. If I could ever figure out how to get trivia into like a concise 5-minute thing, we'll do it. Or we'll have separate trivia things that are just for social, where I'll get these guys to I'll quiz these guys and do a thing just for social. But a lot of fun thing that we have fun things we have planned over on social media for all of you. So please follow all the places that I listed. They'll be in the hyperlink if you're watching or listening later. They'll be available in the episode description as well.
This is how you know Andrew is the best. He's been like thinking through how to get trivia on social for like weeks now.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Bryce, he sent us a video and Bryce and I were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, yes, this is it. And he's just like, I don't know. I'm not real sure yet. Andrew's the best. Go follow Andrew over on all of his social media. Go follow the show over on the Game Theory social media channels. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, just at Motor City Hoops on Twitter. Anything I'm doing, any podcasts, any work I put out will be over there. So follow me there for NBA draft, and Pistons content. Otherwise, right here with Sam Vecenie and Andrew on the Game Theory podcast.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Go to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. Go subscribe on all of your many podcasting platforms that you guys use. We will be back later this week. It might be time for win total over-unders with Robbie Calland. I'm not totally sure yet on that. I think that's probably going to be the move because that would allow Bryce to hopefully be able to relax a little bit over the next 2 midweek podcasts. But we will see what we can do here. And some of it will depend on my schedule as well. Okay. That's the show. Until next time, we'll talk soon.